case of the runaway talent. In a city not too far away,
in academia, in the
planning activities.
Beginning in the late 80s and then into the 90s, there was this idea being
personal recommendations
told,
to identify successors,
particularly by organization economists, that basically you could break up
the vice president
big
of scientific
firms
research,
and
Sally, was surprised to learn
create
that
more
Laura
value
would soon be
because the
Sally
corporate
asked for feedback
offices
on
of these
potential
things
successors.
was only overhead.
Laura nominates her golf buddy, Charlie Porfit, even though he is new to the company.
Wrong, because actually if you were
Sally takes note.
if you believed in markets, you'd looked around the world and you saw an awful lot of big multi-business firms, and they were
after hours of scouring binders and sitting
so I thought
meetings,
I would spend some time exploring what I call corporate value added. And I did that, and all of a sudden it occurred to me that one of the things that was
senior research scientist
most
working on a groundbreaking
closely associated with the creation of real value and sustained over long periods of time was management of succession. And it's not, as soon as you say it, it's pretty obvious that if you can continue to have good leadership, that's going to be very important.
Skills, ideas, and passion will not be easily replaced.
Or to a nation, for that matter. When we study history, we see the same
after
thing.
Jeff's departure, the deceased cure stalls. Also, Charlie is overwhelmed in his new role and has made many promises that he can't fulfill.
Did begin to explore and study. I studied CEO succession.
With the loss of Jeff
and that
Charlie's
led
Porfit,
to the book.
Pharmagood has been
the way
seriously
academics
impacted.
Communicate once they've got a
The leadership
body
team
of knowledge.
is extremely unhappy. Sally realizes the flaws of Pharmagood's succession planning
process.
process.
One of the critical findings was that
meanwhile,
the way you manage succession
Jeff
is basically the way you manage the company.
Announces the news, and their stock price soars.
Companies that
let's try that again.
Have problems with succession
with SAP Talent
usually
Visualization
also begin to have problems with their business.
Talent report called Key Positions
the two tend
that
to
shows
go together.
All the roles that are critical to organizational
companies that
success.
Are able to manage succession well have been investing in the development of leaders, of their people, at the same time that they're developing businesses. In any significant period of time, like several years, 5, it's very, very hard to have a successful business without great people running.
And identifies several well-qualified candidates for this role.
We live in today, lots of competition. So that emerged very clearly that as one finding, and then there are lots of elements about
Jeff Hightalent has exceptional competencies, qualifications, and experience for the position. She drills down into each candidate's profile.
Management succession begins with who you're recruiting,
and quickly sees
how you bring them on board in the company, the career paths that are available for them, the training they get, the mentoring they get, the way in which they are developed. A critical question that comes up all the time
she meets with Jeff to discuss his career goals. He is very excited about the potential of it.
Critical job.
Back in her office, she nominates Jeff as a successor for the key role.
Who do we put in? Well, in the world you just described,
later, Jeff gets a call
the simplest thing is to find the person who can probably do the best job with it and put him in at that point. But that's not what you really want to do. Is you want to also say who
Jeff advances to VP
has a good crack at doing that job, but would really grow because they'd done it.
Shortly thereafter, Jeff successfully
destroys the virus. That is often used on this point is that in the career of Jeff growing, he was brought in to turn around the home appliance business during a period of a big recall, and it was a nightmare. But he
Sally was able to visualize what matters most.
Discussing this that he'd never be CEO of GE had he not had that really tough particular experience. An inside-outsider is someone who is growing up within the organization in just the way I've been described. Was recruited well, developed, and is identified as having potential and given more responsibility, but somehow has managed to also maintain a sense of where the world is going and what is going to have to change in the company if it's going to be successful in the next period. So it's quite typically the insiders are great, but by the time they get up to the very top, they've drunk the Kool-Aid, and they really believe in their organization to the extent that they don't see the need for radical change. They know certain things have to change, do this, do that, and they tend to see things in terms of what you could do step by step. Excuse me, what they could do step by step. But the world is changing very, very, very fast, and that's not enough. And it's often critical to see that real change is needed. That's what you look for. I mean, typically, we know, we see them in any organization we've been with. They are often they tend to be smart. They tend to be difficult. They don't always have the kind of, they don't necessarily play well with others. So they need some work. But that's what it's all about. I mean, when you find those people and you can give them the management skills they need to budget well, to create teams, to lead teams, those are things you can really help people with. It's very hard to give them that breadth of perspective, that mavericks, that willingness to see something and go after it even though no one else necessarily sees it. And in organizations, you look for people like that and you try to develop them. That's a good question because obviously a lot do and some succeed. Generally, if you're going outside, it means that the organization has failed. It has failed, either its performance is so bad that it's clear that within the organization there isn't someone who can see what needs to change. Or they simply haven't developed it may be successful, but they, for reasons such as you described, where there's a very strong leader that's never developed others, there's no one to take over who has the real strength. There are organizations, I think, frankly, a lot of schools, school systems, need change. And they can't get it from within because from people within don't have the skill set. One of the problems in universities is when you promote from within, very often you're just promoting a good department chairman or worse, just a good professor. It's very few schools have a management development program. And we at Harvard Business School, we work very hard to make sure that those faculty who have the talent get a chance to administer over a decade, so that when the time comes to pick a dean, there are usually 4 or 5 people who've been running things, and we can get a sense of whether they'd be a good dean.